Late in his life, Audubon wrote, as so many.
Welcome to Happiness in the City. This is Barbara. Today, I'd like us to focus on a concept that is very important. It's in our daily life, and it is the concept of story. What is story? What is a narrative? Let's think about this because there's a lot of negativity about this word. And the problem is that many people do not understand that there is difference between logos, which is logic, and language, and other ways of conveying meaning. A meaning can be conveyed in a good way, like someone is giving you a gift without saying any words, or it can be conveyed in a negative way when someone does something bad to you. But we have to understand the difference between communication that involves language and other kinds of communication. And story, the word story refers to primarily to linguistic communication, though we can also tell story through other means like photographs, dance, and now we see already how complex this concept is becoming. So we are beginning to understand that there are different ways of telling a story. And what I've been stressing for a while is that we have to differentiate between the vehicle or platform that conveys a story and evaluation of whether the story is truthful and credible or is a lie, or as some people say, fake. There's a lot of confusion today about the word news, which is a form of story. Story can be a narrative, news, film. It's an all-encompassing word that refers to ability and capacity to convey information about sequences of events or nature of certain events or nature of people or personalities or historical legacies. So we have a very complicated, very complex concept. And today people think that using the word fake news makes any sense. It doesn't, because news is a vehicle for sequences of information to be conveyed, but whether it's true or not true is a different activity. It's evaluation of content of the story, credibility, testing the facts in the story. It's a different activity. So when the concept of fake story or fake news, fake narrative came, it created confusion throughout the whole world, because now people think that the vehicle that conveys that story can be banned. And today I was just absolutely sad to hear that some organizations want to ban advertising from governments. And this is very I would say very extensive way to deal with the content of a story, and advertisements can be stories too, because they convey news about something that should be known or is promoted. So this is not the right way. When we have groups or corporations or governments creating stories, we have to have a way to evaluate the content of those stories. And that is the right way to deal with this, not banning whole ways in which stories can be conveyed, because what can happen is banning of truth. And when you ban truth, you are condemned to lies, because then only those things that are not banned are published. But then how do you know if it is a lie or if it is truth if you ban whole groups of people from expressing their stories? So my call to everybody connected with communications throughout the world, and to anyone connected with commercial speech or commerce, is calm down and come back to your grade school education, where your teacher was teaching you the difference between a fact and a lie. So we have to come back to the foundations of communication. And the fundamental way is to come back to logos, to speech, logic. And then, of course, there are other kinds of stories that are conveyed through other means. But if that primary mode of communication, which is language, is ignored, then other stories don't really have the same power to communicate argumentation and persuasion, and to connect us to the way our minds can evaluate whether something is truthful or not, whether something is logical or not. At the highest level, Logos is God Himself. Those of you who know the story of Jesus Christ of Nazareth know that He is called Logos too, that Jesus Christ is the living Word, living Logos. That is awesome. It means that even in Kingdom of God, there is priority given to speech, words, logic, linguistic communication. So let's use this as a standard. Language first, and then we can determine whether we are dealing with truth of some statements or falsity of some statements. Frankly, it's often not that easy to determine that. There are people working in mathematics, and in mathematics, if you ignore logic of mathematics, you will end up with wrong measurements. But it would be totally insane and crazy thing to be in mathematics because some solutions in mathematics turned out to be wrong, fake, as we say today, right? The same with communications. Every institution on earth has a certain nature of communications. Governments have a certain nature, law enforcement has a certain nature of communications, stores, schools, artists, travel agencies, financial people. It's all connected to the way they function. So if some organization, let's suppose some group of people that created a certain political cause to focus the attention. If that kind of group wants to start banning all the other institutions, we will end up sick world. In other words, the institutions that function within their natures would not be able to develop communications and develop connections because they would be paralyzed by some random group that wants to control their speech, but that random group does not understand the diversity of natures of diverse institutions and businesses and other kinds of organizations. So we are dealing with something that is very serious in the world today. As I've been watching the developments in, for instance, social media, I have seen a metaphor of a beautiful tree that one by one cut loses all its branches. So you will end up with a dead tree. Who needs that? That's crazy. So we have to cancel that old way of thinking about communication and come back to the best of our heritage and legacy and education. And that is to give priority to speech of logos, to teaching people how to evaluate whether something is truthful or not truthful, lying, fake, as some people say. So we have to come back to this, or the whole world will end up being deaf and dumb and unable to talk to each other, and that would be a very sad world. So let's go back to the basics that we all know from grade school, and that is that if we don't know something, we have teachers to help us learn it. And that also means we have to learn whether something is truthful or fake in terms of a story. And social media should do that too. Another thing that has been happening is that many people think that if they see something that is lying or fake, that they immediately have to punish that person who created it, or punish the whole organization, cut, eliminate. That is not the right way to respond. That's not the right way to respond to this. The right way would be to create ways to provide alternative to that lie, truth. Because by cutting lie, you will not end up with truth. You will end up with a void. So we have to learn the noble way of teaching each other truth, searching for it. Sometimes it's not so obvious. In my own life, I've gone through a lot of things that I didn't know were not truthful until God showed up and showed me His truth. So I know what it means to maneuver yourself within diverse kinds of lies from people around you, but still, you should search for truth. You shouldn't just cut them all off and be like a withered flower without anybody around and no water. So we have to have courage to admit that those ways of dealing with content of stories were wrong, that we need to come back to conversations, discussions, and more than anything, to restore dignity in each other. Because if you dismiss somebody else's legitimacy to be alive, then you also dismiss that person's ability to teach you something from his or her life. And you never know who can be the one who brings the good news, who is the bearer of truth that you have been searching for. American founding fathers, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and all the other ones, they were highly educated men. They studied classical philosophers. They were highly educated about history of authority, including Roman Empire. They knew what royal power is. They understood the concept of virtue. They understood the concept of nobility and need to continue learning from all kinds of sources that can bring good news. And that's why in American Declaration of Independence we have 3 rights: right to life, that makes it all possible. It's right. No one can destroy someone's life under this divine system of laws. Second, right to liberty. No one can just cut the person's freedom to speak and communicate and freely express that life that comes with language, that comes with voice and logos. And third, right to pursuit of happiness. And pursuit of happiness includes pursuit for joy, associations, freedom of identity, right to identity, because you cannot be happy if your identity is altered or destroyed or hidden. So we have in America's heritage understanding that those fundamental rights are higher than other kinds of laws, that other kinds of laws cannot undermine them or destroy them, which means that there cannot be law that wants to destroy those kinds of foundational rights. But today, when decisions are made about speech in social media, often the primary response is to ban, to cut, to suspend, to remove, to get rid of. This is not making anybody happy. It actually creates fear among all users of social media, because then they think, who is next? And God didn't give us spirit of fear, because that is about penalties and punishments, but spirit of love, spirit of power, and spirit of sound mind. And those 3 spirits power the right to life, right to liberty, and right to pursuit of happiness. We have to understand. Right means no fear. Anytime someone creates a spirit of fear or invokes it or acts on it, you know that those people already are violating the 3 fundamental rights. They want to remove them because those foundational rights of America are ways to safeguard our lives, our liberty, and our pursuit to happiness. If someone removes the spirit of love, spirit of power, and spirit of sound mind from those, they want to subject everybody to punishment through spirit of fear. And American founding was specifically designed to create this wonderful, loving commonwealth that would not have to live in spirit of fear like people without liberty would have to live in. So we have to be very discerning now throughout all organizations, and now because of internet's reach throughout the world, throughout the whole world, to test certain rules and regulations for that spirit of fear. If this creates fear that paralyzes the right to life, right to liberty, and right to pursuit of happiness, that kind of penalty, punishment-driven law has to be eliminated, has to be removed. There are laws that explain the meanings of the three basic rights and create structures to shield those fundamental rights, and that's good. What I'm saying is we have to have a test. If, for instance, someone comes with an idea to ban all governments of the earth from advertising on social media, we know right away that is bad because it blocks the right to pursuit of happiness. In other words, it makes certain organizations unable to connect with the audience to make those that they serve happy. Governments are very important, and we have to learn how to help governments be good, noble, virtuous governments, but we shouldn't block the speech of governmental authority. We shouldn't block the speech of other kinds of virtuous authorities, like the authorities that shield our lives, that shield our liberty, that help us be happy. So we have to go towards the sophisticated way of discerning laws from the point of view whether they create punitive, punishing spirits of fear, or if they promote spirit of love, spirit of liberty, and spirit of sound mind. And if we do that, the entire atmosphere on earth will improve. I know there's a lot of talk today about the pain and suffering of the earth. We are children of the earth. We are also children of God. But earth is the one that feeds us. Earth is the one then that hides us at the end of our lives. So earth is very important for us. And if billions of people throughout the world live in fear and are very unhappy, the earth is unhappy too. What I'm saying is, it's really not that productive to create stories about the earth needing healing while ignoring children of the earth. So we have to be included in that picture, in that image of the earth as a living planet providing life that God supplies to all kinds of creatures of the earth, of the forests, of oceans, rivers, and providing earth for us too. When you look at recent speeches or stories told about the so-called global warming, you don't hear about the people who live on Earth. It's like there's Earth and there's nothing, and we're just kind of hanging in the air. And that is an error. We have to look at the whole planet as the planet that includes us. So I'm showing you the way to test truth of stories or news that you hear. When you hear about global warming and no one talks about people, you know that something is missing. So you start asking questions. What is missing? That's what I did. What is missing? Everybody is ignoring the billions of people who live on Earth. So this is just one example of learning how to interact with stories that are around us, narratives, news, films, in ways that are educational, that will help us be elevated to find truth, to search for it, and to be patient with those who may be in error. Because maybe that person or group of people are also searching for truth, and in the meantime they are living in falsity because they don't have any alternative. Thank you so much for listening to my remarks, and may God's loving power restore spirit of love in all stories and news